Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Minneapolis Northwestern N-Scale Model Railroad Monthly Video Journal. Been working on a project that I started a while back, trying to figure out what to do with this little spot of the layout. Trying to put in some silos and some other interesting little details just to try to finish off this one little spot that hasn't been completed since I started this layout in January of 2015. So trying to come up with some ideas. You can see I did a little fiddling here with some PVC pipes to make some silos and some little ladders and other details. And I think I've finally settled down to what I want to do in this part of the layout. So we'll take a closer look at what I'm doing here. These big white silos are made out of PVC pipe. They're pretty simple. Added a few little details to them to kind of, give a little interest to them, so they weren't just plain cylinders. They measure about 5 inches long. Yeah, it's about a 2-inch pipe here and about 5 inches long, and then I just added some little styrene strips for some detail, just to kind of give them a little interest. And I topped them off with some sheet styrene, sanded around the edges there to make sure the joints were all nice and smooth, and then I just gave them both a shot of gloss white paint. The blue silos, pretty much the same thing, smaller diameter of PVC pipe and some styrene strips to give a little detail. The top was made with some thin sheet styrene, made a little cone on the top and managed to fit that there. This ladder with a safety cage, that was a bit of a tedious project, but it had some nice detail to it. So I'll go into how that was made and how I put it on the silos here. I'm also trying to just make some stuff. I don't have any idea what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to make some interesting looking details. Just something to sort of fit on top of the silos and then bridge across the gap here to the top of the flour mill. This little thing was just kind of a throw together project. I started out with a piece of I-beam there, you can see, to make the base of it. And added some little pipe along the length of it, and then added some small strips for the railings. And these boxes out here at the end, those are just real thin sheet styrene. I just made little boxes and added some little rooftop details. So I have no idea what it is. It just looks kind of interesting, and I just wanted to make something that adds a little detail to the layout and something to sort of connect the silos to the flour mill. Another little box at the other end there. You can see it once it's put into place, and I kind of see how it fits in here. Again, I don't have any idea what these are. I'm just trying to add some interesting detail. And once it was painted silver and finished off a little bit, it looks a little better. It doesn't quite sit right on top of the silos, but we'll figure out that, do a little adjusting on that in the future. Alright, for the blue silos, this ladder and the safety cage, started out working on a little sheet of transparency sheet. It's kind of what used for overhead projectors. So I start on that. It's a nice surface to build on. I've got two uprights for the ladder that I'm working on here, and I cut the little rungs. Got about, I don't know how many rungs I cut, quite a few. And using a pair of tweezers, I dip each end of the rung in a little puddle of glue I have off to the side, and just using a sheet of styrene as a straight edge to kind of help keep the ladder straight to begin with. And when these rungs are going in on the 1/2 inch mark here, I'm kind of working over the top of my grid and filling in all these little rungs. It doesn't take too long. It's like I say, it's kind of a tedious project, but it goes along pretty well. And once these rungs are filled in, they kind of start to stick to the transparency film a little bit, and it kind of holds itself in place for a while. I don't need any tape or anything like that to hold the ladder down in place while I'm working on it. So I fill in the 1/2 inch marks here, and then I come in, try to fill in those little spots between the 1/2 inch marks. And a little closer look, you can see I'm starting to fill in the spaces here between the 1/2 inch marks. Get about 5 rungs per 1/2 inch. And again, I dip the each end of the rung in a little bit of cement. Now you want to be real careful not to use too much cement in these, because the plastic or the styrene is so small it's easy to get too much glue on there, and then everything starts to get a little soft and a little soggy with cement. So you got to be real careful not to use too much cement while you're putting these together. And once I've got all the rungs in order to loosen it from the sheet, I'll use the edge of that straight edge there to kind of nudge it off, because it's all kind of stuck to the transparency sheet, and use that straight edge there to gently push it off. This way it doesn't put any stress on the structure at all. And work on it gently. You can kind of push it off the sheet a little bit, and then once it's loose, then we have our ladder. There's our ladder. One of our ladders to start with. So this project I'm going to need to make 6 of them. So 1 ladder down and 5 to go. Whoopie-doo. Okay, then the next step was to start making some hoops for the safety cage. Now I start with an X-Acto knife handle and tape a small strip of styrene to the handle and wrap it around, and tape the other end so I get it wrapped around nice and snug there, and tape it down. And I'll go upstairs into the kitchen here in a little bit, see what that's for, but we get that all taped down nice and neat, and start a pot of boiling water. Stick the little strip in there for about a minute, probably all you need, about a minute or so, and let it cool. And then once it's cooled off, a little cold water helps cool it down a little bit. Remove the tape, and we end up with kind of a little slinky here. Take that off the knife handle, and it keeps its shape very well after it's been heated. And just take a pair of scissors and snip the rings. And there are our hoops, all the little hoops we're going to use for the safety cage. So this idea works pretty well, and all those little hoops maintain their shape pretty well while we're building. And start on the ladder again. I've got this marked at about the 1 inch marks here, and I'll put down, or rather attach, 1 hoop at about the 1 inch marks here, trying to keep them straight. I'm a little off camera here. Yeah, a little bit of glue again, and just very lightly start gluing those hoops on the ladder, keeping the little cut, the open part of the ring to the back of the ladder so it doesn't show up anywhere. So the hoops appear continuous from the front. The little cut is in the back. And very carefully try to align these straight, keep them nice and straight as I can. And just add a little bit of glue. Don't need very much. Oops, I'm off camera again. Come on, down in front. Come down here where everyone can see. There we go. Okay. So I just start with these basic hoops here. And you want to let that sit and dry for a while, because otherwise if you start moving too fast, the hoops start to move out of place and a little difficult to work on them. So put a few on and let them set for a while before you go to the next step. Alright, once I've got just a few of the hoops on there, I add some vertical pieces, these little strips again, add some verticals here, and again just a little bit of glue on the hoops. Try to get add about the quarter circle points on those hoops. And sorry, I'm a little off camera here, but I think you can see enough to see what I'm doing. Get those little uprights, vertical uprights on there. We're going to put 4 of them on there, so we're going to use about the quarter points on each hoop. And we'll get to the second one here, let them sit for a little bit. Usually these set up pretty quick if you use real small amounts of cement. Later I found it was easier to use a little brush rather than this tube, or rather a big bottle of cement. Worked pretty well. Okay, grab the next one and splang. Come here. Try to get that down. So a little bit, takes a little fussing around to get these things to behave, but once you get them down there, they settled in pretty well. Okay, we're going to put 4 of these uprights on here. I've got 2 on so far. And just got to work carefully with them and not bend it too much, and eventually they'll stick in place for you. And once we got the 4 vertical strips in there, it's easier to come back in and fill in the rest of the hoops. Sometimes they need a little straightening to before you insert those, and just put it around the ladder, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes they'll just kind of hold themselves in place once you've got those vertical strips in there, and a little bit of glue, and they will start to hold itself in place. Once you get a little cement on there, they don't move around so much. Now I tried to put a little cement on the tip of this knife here, but later I found out it's just better to use the little brush that comes out of the glue bottle, and you'll see me using that here in a bit. So a little experimenting, but eventually I went to the brush. It worked much better. And we'll keep filling in the gaps. And once you get these rings in place, if they kind of hold themselves in place once you get them there, close to where you want it to be. And again, use very sparingly on the cement here. You don't want to do too much because it'll make the plastic pretty soft and soggy. So be very careful how much glue you use, and a little straightening out on each ring. Once you get the glue in there, it starts to settle down, doesn't move around so much. So a little straightening to get them to behave. So I put in the hoops at about every half-inch mark, and then filled in 2 more between each half-inch spacing on these hoops. So worked out pretty well. And once you get them in there, it looks like a lot of nice detail. Yeah, a little bit more glue. Again, be careful with the glue. The brush really worked out to be the best of what I was using after I experimented for a few different things. So that turned out to work the best. And a little look at the finished cage here, the ladder and safety cage. All the pieces are in. And after a little shot of some silver spray paint, it's not too hard to just glue it to the side of the silo. And I just glued it at 4 points where those bands are. And it worked out pretty well. I'm going to add some more details up near the top so it doesn't look like the ladder just comes to the top of the silo. It ends there. I'll be adding some more details to the top of the silos a bit later. So back up on the layout here and kind of see what it looks like here. I'm also trying to build a little shed. I made a cardstock mock-up of that little shed I want to put in here. What's the shed for? I don't know. I'm just kind of filling in some details here, trying to make everything look a little interesting here. So the shed was real easy, pretty much 3 sides and a roof. You can see the foundation of it there. And later put on some more details and paint. Now there wasn't much to this shed. It's pretty much just 2 long sides and a roof, and I put in some little lights, so a little weathering and what I hope kind of looks like a corrugated tin roof. So not much to this shed. The lights and things will help add a little interest to the scene. A little bit of weathering. I used some pan pastels to weather the top and the sides. So a little shed will go in there, and there'll be some connections between those blue silos and the shed eventually to try to add a little more detail to it and give it a little more interest to the scene. Well, there's a lot to do in this project. I want to put in some scenery along the backdrop there to start filling that in a little bit. You can see in the foreground here there's some unfinished foam that needs to be covered. And working on some tricky ballasting around these turnouts here. I want to make sure those are working well before I put on the upper deck. Once the upper deck is on, this is going to be a hard area to reach. So I'm very carefully ballasting around these turnouts in this area. And other bits of scenery, more ballast has got to go on the track lead, the yard lead. You can see there that curve in the foreground there, that needs to be ballasted. So more testing to do. I want to make sure this is working well before I put the lid on this thing and start moving on to the upper deck. And then the next shot here, you can see kind of an overview of the project. There's the turnout that I'm trying to replace. I need to get that put in and patched into the layout. The silos here are starting to look pretty good. And more ballasting in the back. You can see I've got some exposed surfaces there that need to be covered, some ground cover and all. So we'll cover that in the next video. So thanks for coming, thanks for staying, thanks for watching, thanks for all the support from viewers and subscribers. It's very much appreciated. So happy railroading to everybody, and we'll see you next time on the monthly video journal. Bye-bye.